Yeah.
Do them almost. Oh, no, we're good. For meeting today, we could start with roll call.
Oh, Ash.
Juliana. Yes, Chris, our new member, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Chris will be being here very soon. Let's see, next, approval of minutes. I know that not everyone the minutes because of so if you would like to press to next week, we totally can. It's up to y'all. Okay. Okay, no questions. Okay, so would you want to do? Right. So there's. We just need to vote. Yeah. So this is everybody read the minutes. Yes. Questions. Okay. Thank you. All in favor? Okay. So this is going to be a pretty short meeting. I'm going to go ahead and address the financials as it's substantive. I get all of the financial statements from each of our financial institutions. We have to push to next month. Do we need to vote on that good statement? That's it. All right. So we'll be reviewing February and March. As far as the director's history, commissions you've been on, anything like that?
So I served on the planning commission recently. Up here in town, very active with the nonprofits. Real estate agents. Also teach accounts. Glad to be here.
Thank you for serving, for bringing this service.
Absolutely.
We have a grant update. So in February, we started some of our scholarship. At this point in time, but we're starting the approval process. There's been leave the both of those done. And hopefully, getting some checks out to people. The first cycle has been relatively full as far as the admin get through things and being able to like take the time to each application. Because there is some need that we can't, that isn't completely under an umbrella of a grant, but could potentially be handed by language or a new grant. So there's some things that we're kind of experiencing. We can get into that discussion later.
Do you want to tell Chris what our budget is?
I believe
The could be using, especially towards the end. It hadn't been disclosed. It wasn't clear who was going to take advantage of that based on the application. Into the information. So it's a slight change to
Ongoing thing all the time. And so since I need to. I mean, some of these things that since I'm new, necessarily know.
Yeah.
Career.
for sure. Okay. Yeah, let me so firstly, like rolling grants. So there have people are applying for this at a certain time. What we've done by implementing grants like this is now that we to what and when is the need for grants, and now we can make an assessment. I mean, the goal is to like use all of what we have in the grant, but you know, I'm sure that in separate, like for a couple of the grants, they're quarterly. So, you know, the need might be at the beginning of the year, but maybe not so much in the middle of the year. So by doing some of these grants, I think a bit of like, so like, if we do this quarterly, are we distributing like these funds, the split up a lot of the funds correctly? Because we might decide that maybe third quarter we only for 2 because of the need. So the kind of what we're trying to assess right now as they've all been rolling in, which as far as like what really accounts or what really fits under this umbrella for this, because there's a bit of confusion, but there's room to get that money out. Maybe not under that budget line, but maybe we need to budget line or a different line. So that's kind of the approach we're taking to it right now. Just what was your other?
Well, I mean, maybe this is
Yeah.
so the different areas. And it looks like idea looks like. Well, I was like, for example, the zone art grants done in two tranches during that year of the 40,000. Have one in February.
Yeah,
and in there.
yes.
Such roughly. God grant isn't ongoing. We look at those. It's not.
Yeah, that
there's
is a
not-
rolling.
That is a
So
rolling.
that's-
Yeah, that's a right. City art program, we're gonna have to.
So that one is. It was initially sort of a general, but I think that. Hey, Holly, you wanna jump in here?
Yeah, hey, I'm gonna try. The sound is kind of cutting in and out on my end, so I'm kind of catching things. Can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So your question is about the hold on, the city art program grant for 30,000. Correct? That's 20,000. Okay. Thank you. So historically, that fund has just been used for city arts projects within the zone at the assistant director for the arts discretion. That fund was not touched in 21 or 22, but we do like to just keep it in there if we are targeting like a specific initiative within the BUA zone that we could use those funds for. But this is not a grant cycle in tandem necessarily with the Bloomington Arts Commission like that zone art grant line is.
Okay, thank you. Then under the zone and Dee, I don't want to step on your toes here, but under the zone improvement grants, those are ones we just kind of set up this year. We have quite a bit of money that we need to get out. So as my understanding, the staff is looking at some guidelines for each of those.
Oh, okay.
Small business safety and security with lighting, that alarm systems, those kinds of things for zone businesses. Business building improvement, home improvement. So some of all those would be in the zone grants, but we're looking at developing guidelines for
Yes.
those grants. Because we had quite a bit of additional funds that we needed to get out.
Right.
So that we just kind of put those as placeholders in our budget for this year. So,
Yeah.
So do the unused funds, do they roll over or do they?
you know, we have that ongoing issue. Yeah. We do a new budget every year. So if there's unused funds that there's been a grant awarded, we'll go ahead and finish dispersing those, but we kind of start a new cycle every year.
But effectively it does, because, you know,
Yeah.
unlike in other instances where it's use it or lose it,
Yeah,
the pot from which this comes is the same pot into which it goes.
Right.
So to some degree, it effectively rolls over back into its own budget source.
Right.
Plus it gets augmented by new budget source, you know,
Right.
new
Yeah.
budget
Right.
revenues. So technically, it's not like, it doesn't become.
But I think, I mean, I understood the question as like, so if we don't use 20,000 under small business safety and security,
Right.
is next year it's 20 plus something, you know, whatever we didn't use. That's not the case.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so also the goal of these cycles, you know, we've, you know, chunked out, you know, 5,000 per quarter. If we don't use the entire 5,000 that first quarter, we want to try and roll it over into the second quarter and see if we can't, you know, blow through that if possible. But you know, it's a new process. It's something that hasn't been implemented before, so
Yeah,
we're working on that, trying to push out these funds.
Can you go up to the city or the arts grants again?
Sure.
So what happened to the city art program?
Mhm.
Holly said that it hasn't been touched. So that 30K from last year wasn't touched.
Just goes back into the.
Into-
So it's the general, it's
It
not.
just stayed in our funds.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Not the general fund, right? The BUA is it's its own.
No, I didn't mean the.
Yeah, the-
general fund for the
the
city.
UA is-
Yeah.
And I think that's why we set it at 20 because it hadn't been
Hadn't been
used.
used.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So, but we did set up these placeholders under zone improvement grants are new this year. Correct? Yeah,
Yes.
those are all new and we had talked about that we needed new programs. We need we need
Yeah.
new ways of dispersing funds into
Right.
for zone residents and businesses. So that's kind of what we said
Because
as
your pot of money
placeholders.
continues to grow. You're
Exactly.
not using the 30 and then not using the 20 and then all of the others. So, you
Right.
know, as Alex pointed out, there's new revenue coming in
Right.
every year.
Mhm.
So being able to have more creative ways to get the funds in the community, I applaud that. I think that's great.
So Dee's group is coming up with individual like programs under each of those.
Okay.
Yes, so and then we'll set up like program guidelines for each of the grades, so we'll know.
I would say two things. One is, it might be worth now that there's two new members that were not part of the budgeting process. To do a sidebar, and just take you both through the budget, because the budget is, like it always is for any organization, is the sort of where the rubber.
It's,
Right.
yeah, it's what drives your.
Can I just pause? Kat's had a comment that they're not getting audio. So,
I'm glad you're on that, Mary.
Yeah, I'm paying not any attention to what's going on in the sidebar.
and Holly, I think I have the same problem.
Holly, can you hear us?
I can hear you better now, but it's still kind of cutting in and out.
Interesting. I wonder if we're just dealing with a loose cable or.
Well, it sounds like Katz is either getting limited audio or they have a problem on their side, because if Holly's hearing us, they should be able to hear us at least some way.
Yeah.
So Katz, I don't know if you can chat with us to let us know if it's just breaking in or out, or are you simply not hearing us outright?
Any audio there.
So then the second thing I would say in terms of the budget is that.
Oh, a problem on our end, okay.
Okay.
Yay.
That the budget is established, it's a pretty thorough process. It's established once a year, but I think it also doesn't preclude the UEA from making a game time decision. If something
Right.
presents itself mid-year, it's not so fossilized that you can't
Right,
be flexible in the course of the year if something really presents itself that the UEA wants to
right.
consider.
So like with any nonprofit budget, I would say the same thing, where I work, you need to have
Be fluid.
fluid
Yeah.
when something presents
Yeah.
itself, so.
So for example, MCCSC, we asked them last year, did they have additional needs? And we did an additional 10 or 15,000.
35.
We did 35.
35,000. So, and obviously Templeton, Tri-North and Fairview are all within.
Okay.
Zone
They're in the
schools.
zone, right.
Yeah, and they come and they make a great presentation. We always know where they spend the money. I think it's a real feel good thing for this board. I think so. So anyway, but so we have made some game time decisions as to what.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Alex, you know the numbers better than me, but we had additional because of the Cook expansion or the.
Yeah, so, and again, this might be.
Good for them,
But
yes.
just at a very high level, the way the BUEA has revenue is because a organization will take advantage of either a real or personal property enterprise zone investment deduction. When they do that, which is effectively a 10-year tax abatement, as long as they're eligible, they, in exchange for receiving the benefit, they then pay back some of that benefit in the form of a fee to the UEA. So when you have, smaller ones, it is nice because it keeps your revenue flow, but occasionally you have these really big ones that hit and you don't see them coming. So when you're doing your revenue forecast for the course of the year, you may or may not know something is coming and then it hits. And then that really sort of has a material change in your budget. So
Right.
that's what happened. In this case, Catalan had one that just was completely different than what the expectation was for revenue. That gives UEA greater revenue stream for the period that organization takes advantage of it. And then it also allows us to be a little bit more generous and flexible in terms of creating programs that we may not have been able to do in the past.
Right, so in essence, if everybody stopped doing those types of grants, at 10 years, we would effectively run out of our funding sources.
Right.
So, but as people roll on, that continues our funding sources. So anyway, that's kind of how it works.
So I see the unbudgeted grants, I see budgeted 2023. Is that just grants that that people present or?
So I've only been in the position for about 5 months. My thought on that would be, if someone came with a good presentation, then we would have room in the budget to be able to potentially fund that.
It's kind of like the miscellaneous.
Yeah.
So you're going to the bottom, so the total budget for 2023 is.
So,
Okay. Good.
Normally, we could be criticized for being too conservative, but then something like CDFI friendly Bloomington comes down the pipe and boom, we make it rain.
We gave it $1 million.
Oh, gotcha.
And it was unanimous.
And I mean, it
Good.
was a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we also funded the kind of the prelim stuff that came, we funded half of the administrative expenses, which was about 75,000, I
Yeah.
think, so.
And yeah.
The thing about enterprise zone investment deductions, I think you're right, that is different than tax payments. The two are pretty similar to each other. In the case of an acquisition of a transfer of ownership, the enterprise zone investment deduction does not transfer. In the case of a tax payment, it can. So, that also creates sometimes a dynamic where you're kind of think you're going to have 10 years of something, someone sells.
Right,
Okay.
And boom, poof, right? So you got to be a little careful, like the
Gotcha.
upside is great,
Right.
and it happens surprisingly, but the downside can also be a reality to deal with. So that's why
Right.
you can't really budget out too many years in advance. You can get a year or two out if you want, but there are a lot of variables.
Right, forecasting.
so,
Good.
anyway.
Oh, good stuff.
that actually leads into my next note about easements. The formal letters and emails are going to be hitting everybody's inboxes next week. We'll have filing instructions, forms, and if any questions can be directed to either BUEA at bloomington.ia.gov, myself, D. Del Rosa at Bloomington, or ESD at Bloomington.
And they're
So
due May 1st, is that what
they're due May 15th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you may want to explain in case everybody, so you want to explain the process? You want me to do it?
You do it.
It's your first time. All
Yeah,
right. So.
you do it. You say it better.
The people who have already activated an enterprise zone investment, so you are not getting letters and you're not expected to do it. Anybody who has activated an enterprise zone investment deduction, every year has to file essentially a renewal of it to say, I would like to take advantage of it again. And so every year they do what is it, ZBR? Is that what
It's there's an EZBR and I think EV-2.
All right, it's one of those. So they have to do a form, and that says, I want to continue as long as I'm eligible. And oh, by the way, I'll be paying you this fee because that's annual.
Right.
payment. So we have a self-interest as a BUEA and Dee as the director to make sure that we get everybody to remember they're supposed to do this because we actually have money.
Right.
So that is why we take the kind of proactive step of the directors to send out a reminder and make sure that people are aware of it and know what they're supposed to be doing and all that, because in the end, we're the beneficiaries of it as a funding source, right? And they're the beneficiaries too, but we have that. And there's a parallel process for tax payments that are, where a separate form has to be sent into it. It's nothing to do with the UEA.
And the revenue generally, through a couple of months where most of the revenue comes in.
So we'll get most of the revenue in April and May.
April.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when our funding time of the year is for us, so.
Okay.
So now Dee will have to follow up on people that are delinquent. I think that we did used to have people that were delinquent. Well, the last couple of years, we haven't had anybody.
Yeah, it's hard to I've seen everybody's been like
Yeah,
just on it,
Yeah.
which is great.
so,
Makes my job easier.
so anyway, but so our funding will come in the next couple months.
Do we have a list of who?
What we don't have a list of, which is the harder part, is people who are intending to do it in the future, 22K, 23.
Yeah.
They are not on our radar yet, so we don't, or may or may not be anecdotally on our radar. And so that's the group that's harder to track, because they have to be in compliance, they have to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But they haven't had any history with us, so we don't know that they're out there yet, right?
So one more thing I'll have you, if you can touch on it, is the personal property.
Yeah.
You know, as we talk about that being an additional funding source for us. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, so one of the problems is that if you, there is a kind of not insignificant restriction on getting an enterprise zone investment deduction within a TIP. So if you're in a tax increment finance district, the council does not like to issue an enterprise zone investment deduction within a tax increment finance district, right? Because it's essentially stealing Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
So that's a big, that can be an issue, right, for someone's, but a tax increment finance district only applies to real property. It does not apply to personal property. And so personal property investments made within an enterprise zone and a TIP are actually eligible. And so Jane, who was Dee's predecessor, realized that that was actually a kind of, seam of opportunity that we should be focusing on. And so she started really shaking the trees on that. We got some nice personal property enterprise zone investment deduction activity. Kind of have to let people know. It's a little wonky, but you have to let people know that it's out there. And if you do, then we get we get at least partial investment revenue back in, even if the real estate side of things is ineligible for an enterprise zone investment deduction.
So it was an expanded funding source for us, so.
Which we'll, have to continue to cultivate. And I think there is one that we know of already coming in as a personal property investment deduction. Pretty sure. So, so anyway, it's a kind of a gift.
Right, which is good because we have to keep our funding sources
Yeah.
alive, so.
Yeah, of course.
So at what point does a company or property owner, are they introduced to this? Is it through planning or is it, and when does the city first hear that it's in the works?
Well, I'll give you this example, and I won't name them because I'm not sure if they're intending to do it, but we try to let people know as much as possible. We try to get the word out, all of that. They will find out either from us, they'll find out sometimes from the BEDC, sometimes from the chamber, sometimes they just know, sometimes, other city departments will know. If you look back and you look at 2022, and I am this entity, and my property was assessed on early in 2022. I had not yet made my investment yet. So my property, let's call it, was $100,000. And I made my investment of another $100,000 to make it easier in June, right? My investment will only show up on my 2023 assessment, right? So because my investments happened after the original one and now it can be tracked as part of the new one. So now 2023 is the first year that I have an assessed value that reflects the investment I made in 2022. I have to file in 2023. Right? And I will start to get the benefit for that in 2024.
Yes.
Okay, so that's essentially how it plays out. So it's a little bit of a process, but eventually it starts to play out. And then I get it for 2024 for 10 years, right? As long as I keep paying the BUA and I want to have it sold and such.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's
Great.
That's so much better than I
Yeah.
can at this point. I'll get there.
Doing it longer.
Yeah. All right, so as far as new business, and this just kind of goes back to the director's report, our intern Lisa Rivas has constructed a Canva booklet to kind of let people know about the things that the BUEA does as far as funding. So this is definitely not quite done, but as you can see, we've got a nice summary as to what the BUEA is and what it does. Zone map, which probably needs to be updated, but it is currently a placeholder. We have some nice photos, and I just wanted the board to have a copy of it to look at it. So if you have any input as to what else you would like in there, if there are past programs or past projects that you think should be in there for people to know about. But we just thought that it would be good to have something visual, potentially tactile, that we could get in people's hands and be like, hey, you live here and this is what we can do for you. just to kind of cultivate our sources of income and also our sources of charity as well. So, yeah. I don't know how involved you guys want to get into this or how much you've gotten a chance to take a look at it, but I definitely just wanted to get it into your hands. So, maybe we can either talk about it now, or we can talk about it next meeting, but yeah, it's unfinished, but I would love recommendations.
Yeah, I love the direction it's going, and I feel like for board members too, to have it on hand so that we can very quickly, I mean, a lot of this is on your website, I understand,
But it's so nice to have like a
Yeah,
reference
yeah,
sitting
yeah,
right
yeah.
next to you.
So I guess the one question I had is, are you planning to add in all of those new grant programs later?
We will, we want to make sure that we have all the wording
Right.
correct. We
Right.
have like the blessing from the board on all of them and all of that
Right.
before we add
Yeah,
them in.
okay, put that-
There may be some placeholders for some of them within this,
Mhm.
just because we're working, kind of workshopping the
Sure.
format and the layout. But yeah, we won't add any of the new funding in there until we are solid on what we're asking.
It's also intended to be kind of a living, breathing document, right?
Yes, yeah,
Sound
I'm,
like you're gonna be printing out 1,000.
no, not at all. I would like to do a limited amount per year. And so it would be a yearly update of all the grants and things like that and means of communication, because I know you guys want me to be here forever, but I'm not going to be. But yeah, there's a lot of contact information to change, if we get more money.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to say, hey, we have more money for this grant, so we definitely do want it to be a living document.
Alex, some of the work that we did on branding and logo and stuff like that, I didn't see that in here. Is there a reason why we haven't seen that, or?
No, I think that's a really good question. I don't know if Lisa was just kind of putting this stuff together.
She was just kind of putting it together. I didn't really push the logo stuff on her quite yet. I kind of just wanted to see what kind of product she was gonna put out and kind of put it in front of you guys. But of course, logo and branding, of course, we will add that, and that's something that can be a post production, I guess.
So I just thought, we kind of spent some money on that.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, and we kind of wanted a cohesive look to some things.
It's sort of implied if you look, just scroll up a little bit, you'll see that band, or down the other way. Down a little further, down a little further, down a little further, and see the top of the courthouse.
Am I looking at it?
Go down a little bit more.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, there it is.
So the old BUEA logo was I don't know where it came from, but it was not great.
Right.
So some of the stuff that is just prettying up
Right.
the ability to do banners and
Right.
that sort of thing.
Right.
But I think that embedded in that, which was also really helpful, was a social media strategy and a kind of communication strategy.
Exactly.
Which would be really useful now, particularly.
Right.
Which are definitely things I need to familiarize myself with, because I'm aware of some of the branding stuff, but not quite all of it. So,
Yeah,
but
especially like when you're sending out emails and stuff, that would be probably a
Yeah,
good thing to
absolutely.
use too, so.
For sure. Yeah, so I encourage you to look at it, give us all of your recommendations, anything else you'd like for us to add in that, or if you see that there are any mistakes or however we can make this more digestible visually or, language wise, just let us know. Okay.
I think in particular, the newbies, right? Because I think you're coming with a fresh set of eyes that you
Exactly.
may not have the embedded information about. So if there's something that doesn't read well or is not clear, coming with that perspective would be helpful, because presumably someone in the community will not have the background that the rest of us have, that just making it as clear as possible.
For sure. Does anyone have any more questions about that or anything? Okay, we hope to be able to bring you another draft next month so everybody can see it and kind of get their hands on it. Yeah. Other new business that I had, I did want to talk a little bit about new grant considerations. One of the things that we kind of have seen with the not only the DEI scholarship, but a couple of other grants. So the grants or some of the asks don't quite fit under the umbrella. Like, for instance, for DEI, we have there's an organization that would like to provide ASL and Spanish for their employees, but like under their umbrella. So they would essentially be offering a class themselves, not for any profit. But it doesn't quite fit under the umbrella of the DEI scholarship because we are trying to reimburse or pay for a class that someone is going to take. So I think that there might be room for either expanding language within some of the scholarships or considering making another scholarship for something like that. I think especially with the DEI one, because we've had several asks of like, well, I'm going to teach a class. And it's like, well, it doesn't quite fall underneath the guidelines. So I just kind of wanted to bring it to the board's attention that it's kind of been, we haven't gotten a ton of applicants this quarter for DEI, but it's almost been 50-50 on people taking a class or people wanting to try and provide a class or provide services for those that would benefit from DEI, like people of color, LGBTQ, and provide services as well. So I think that there might be room to put something like that in what we have right now. So that's kind of what I'm bringing to the board.
So as it's written, and I'll have to read more about the specific grant. So as it's written right now, a scholarship would be for an individual who's wanting to participate in a class or like a conference or something, online, program or something like that under that. So it would pay for that.
Yeah, so it's directed towards businesses giving themselves or their employees.
Okay.
So
So these are not individuals. This is business. Okay.
yes, this is a business.
Okay.
To improve diversity training in
Mhm.
businesses.
Okay. So
That's
the
what it
business,
was. how
It's
it
the
was-
initial or the
okay,
original.
so a business might bring in an expert to give a training to their employees on
Right.
a topic under.
Mhm.
Well, I think
Like that, so-
what you're saying is as currently designed, the only way to actually benefit is if you do bring in an external, you have to bring in an external entity because the grant is configured on the premise that you are reimbursing the business for the cost of that third party coming in and doing the training. So-
Yes, yeah,
Whereas what I think you're raising is that in some cases, there's the ability for the business itself,
to provide that
Right.
training for another business.
but there's no latitude in our current grant structure to facilitate that much.
Exactly.
So provide that for another business. I'm not following.
So in other words, there are businesses that do specialize in DEI instruction.
Okay,
Or, sole proprietors, essentially like,
right.
self-employed people who are, who can do this sort of
Okay.
training.
Couldn't they just ask their client to apply? I
Yeah.
mean, it seems
But
to
if the
me.
client's not in the zone, right, then.
Well, but then it wouldn't be applicable.
Well,
But I mean, if the business providing the services in the zone, but maybe I'm
Right.
getting too into.
well,
the weeds here.
and so here's my interpretation of this sort of need. Because there are so few DEI programs. That it's a pretty limited pot
Sure,
that we've
right.
got going right now. And so if we can find a way to help people be able to provide that service to more people, then we can get more people doing DEI training, if you get what I'm saying. So I mean, I think that it's even in my search to try and do that training for an establishment here that I was working at, it was so hard to find someone or find a course or find something to get my staff at to get that training.
So when we initially started that DEI grant, the chamber,
Mhm.
I think at that time
Yep.
was offering DEI training. And what we agreed to, what we thought we would do is support member businesses sending employees to that training. That's how it all started. So, and then I think that program, Mary,
Filled up really
fill up,
fast.
yeah,
Yeah.
filled up very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So that is why we kind of expanded it a little bit.
Sure, sure.
But I do still think we need to focus on zone businesses.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's definitely the point of that, but I think that if there was some type of an attractant within the zone, because I feel that there are probably people within the zone that are capable of giving these types of services or maybe trained in these types of services. So the exploration of possibly giving people funding to apply this training, I don't know, I'd like to explore that option and see if we can't.
I mean, I think it would be a good thing for you to explore and then just
Yeah.
bring it back to us and see what, where we are.
For sure. For sure.
I don't, how's everybody else feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think without a specific example or something, I'm struggling to understand. So for business in the zone, provide DEI training
Right.
and seeking maybe a grant to help support that training for businesses. And if the business is not in the zone, are we in the, and the person providing the training is, or the company
yeah.
is that what we're talking about if there's an example? So for me, I think if there was
Yeah.
something specific, then
For sure.
being able to understand that.
Yeah, and I do want to stress that the board's mission statement is to, assist, the community, not just the zone, to benefit the community, not just the zone. So, when we talk about those kind of examples where it's like someone within the zone who can do that training, giving training outside of the zone, I think that is something that's very applicable, so, when we think about some of the funding and the programs that we back, there does need to be some core element to the zone. Either it's benefiting the zone directly as like the community within the zone, or it's benefiting the zone as there's a member of the zone who is going out into the community who is affecting change.
Right.
So also looking at that broader picture of how we're not only, helping the people within our imagined boundaries, but how we're helping the Bloomington on the whole.
But,
Yeah.
like, for example, I'll just throw out MCCSC, we support the 3 schools in the zone, but we don't support the other schools because that's where the funding goes. Because my understanding is it should stay in the zone. So I don't know, but you may have pull up something different, so.
Well, I think the founding documents of the UEA allow for either in the zone or benefiting the zone, right? So there's a little bit of latitude, and we ran into this at the time that we were doing the rapid response fund loans where it was
Right.
borderline, right?
Right,
So we
yeah.
could kind of make the call that it was like close enough, right?
Right, yeah.
It's not a hard
Right.
line must fall within this map, right?
Yeah.
Kind of situation. But I also think that what you're raising is that even our definition of what does it mean to be doing DEI training is not as black and white as we originally
Right,
conceived. And it's a, there's a spectrum that includes what we conceive, which is at one end, which is someone hires a group to come in and do the train their employees. But if the whole end goal of diversity training is, if the outcome that we're looking for as opposed to the mechanism, if that is a more diverse and sensitive, populace to diversity, that could take a whole bunch of forms. And I think we just have to become comfortable with how are we defining it? And, maybe it's, for starters, we're doing this, but maybe we need to expand it over time and just, I think, bringing even hypotheticals or specific examples, I think makes sense.
For sure.
So here's where I'll just tell you, if we're looking at a zone business that does provide DEI training, they go with a business outside the zone to do that. They get paid for that, and then we're paying them. I don't like that. I think that's a double dipping, and I don't think that's the use of our funds. So that's where I don't know if that's a scenario or not, but I'm just kind of
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you bring up a good point, you
Yeah.
know, and it will definitely have to be defined within the guidelines as to, you know, if you're providing a free service, that is something completely different than
Right,
something
right,
for
yeah.
profit. No, absolutely.
Right.
I definitely
Yeah, okay.
completely understand that,
Okay.
because we're not just, that's not the purpose
That's
of
not the
giving out a
purpose,
grant.
right,
We're trying to
right.
give grants to people who
Right.
need the money,
We
not,
need the money.
Right,
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
and can't do it another way, so.
Exactly, for sure. Okay, well, you know, we'll work on that and try and come up with something that's a little bit more more structured
Okay.
for you to see and give us
Yeah,
some
that'd be great.
hypotheticals and see what we can do.
Question,
Sure.
on the zone. Is this the same zone from when it was established, or has it ever changed?
This is a placeholder map,
Oh.
so this may not be
Oh, there you go.
accurate.
This is the active.
Is
And
this the
but I
accurate?
can answer that. I don't know. Certainly not in the last 6 years. And I don't know if it was ever expanded. There was talk of expanding it even as early as 3 or 4 years ago.
Mhm.
In part because of this tip contention that we have, right? This tax and finance district contention, where if you sort of overlay that map on top of this,
Mhm.
it starts to get a little wonky,
Yeah.
funky in terms of where it's even eligible, right?
Yes.
So there was some talk of doing that. We didn't do it at the time because we were actually concerned about the expiration of the.
Right,
of the
we
zone.
went for a whole year where we really
Sure if it was
did,
gonna-
yeah.
Yeah, but that's always on the table and can and should be revisited at some point. And I can try to find out and we'll get back maybe at the next meeting, let you know if we can find anything historically that altered.
And when was it initially established?
1992, I think. I think it was 92.
And is it established originally by the state or locally or?
It's done locally, but it's through state, you know, you sort of trigger it locally, but it's within an umbrella of the state.
So what year was it that because we actually expired or matured or whatever we did, was it 18 or 19? It was 19, wasn't it?
It may have been, we were. Maybe 18.
19?
18. I feel like it was.
Okay, so we had a whole year that we just had our pot of funds. We kind of still gave money away, but we weren't getting anything in,
We
correct?
couldn't accept any applications because we didn't
Right,
know if
right.
we would be in business.
Right,
I
right,
mean, we would be in business, so we still have the reserves of money, right? So
Right.
even if the zone itself is deactivated, right? The only thing that does is it says you can't get new stuff in.
right.
Anybody who's in place can keep paying in. And the reserves that you have in place, which are fairly substantial for the BUEA, continue to be there and can still be allocated out. But it's kind of like you got but then you're sort of, it's running against time where you end up, you will deplete them eventually if you don't have new revenues coming in. So we have that period.
Yeah, where we were kind of talking about how long we could last on what our budget was, and yeah,
So how often do you have to reapply?
10 years.
Every 10 years? And how much is?
Oh, we have like
It's like
2 million.
2.8.
2.3, okay.
2.8. So it's like, yeah, 2.3 or 2.8.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
true.
Okay. So I think that's all I have. The next bit is unfinished business with which are elections for our vice chair position. Julie has graciously agreed to stick with us throughout the end of the year.
Yeah.
And we greatly appreciate it, Julie. Thank you so much. We will have full officer elections in January, as specified by the bylaws. Those happen every 2 years. So I've never done this before with the board, specifically this one. So if anyone would be willing to take me through this process, I would greatly
Well, I think
appreciate
there are two
it.
things we have to do. One is, I'm being a little selfish here, is before soon you joined, I went to the banks to try to figure out who was on which.
Yeah.
That. So we have at each bank, we have 3 or 4 different banks that we do business with, and each one has different signature cards, and we need to kind of refresh, at least in all of the cases, who is on. So I would say that maybe the first step would be, and Mike, maybe we can help, which is to take a vote on the full slate of officers. And then the second thing would be to take a vote, clearly state for the record in the minutes and take a vote on who should be on the signature card, probably keep that to a, relatively small group,
I
but
think we've had 3 before.
yeah, in some cases 5 or 6 even.
Yeah.
But I think we should just kind of decide who needs to be on it. Doesn't have to be everybody. And then clearly have that documented in the minutes so that we can then go back to the banks and then there'll be some follow-up paperwork.
What officers does the board elect? Sorry, this is my. ignorance.
So there is a president or
Vice
chair.
Our chair, which
Yeah.
is Julie, and
Already
then.
Elected.
I think I'm already in. I had asked to go off, but I am gonna stay, but I think I'm in my 2-year period.
Okay,
Yeah,
great. So
so-
you elect a slate of officers for a 2-year period.
Right.
Yes, yes,
And we lost our vice chair
yes,
and we need to elect a vice chair. Is that correct?
yes.
But for belt and suspender purposes, should we just state for the record who everybody is and just vote on that?
I mean, if you have, again, this is my ignorance about this, so I can't bring the history here. You guys are gonna have to help me with that.
For certain.
But I think if you just have a vacant vice chair position, you would just, somebody would nominate a vice chair, there'd be a motion, a second, and a vote. As simple as that. So, and then you move on to signature issues.
All right. I nominate Heather Robinson for my.
My first vote.
So we have a motion and it's been seconded.
Yeah.
Do we have to do roll or can we just do a yay, nay?
We don't have anybody on.
Voice vote is fine.
Yeah,
This vote is fine. Okay, great. So,
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Yeah, congratulations.
all right.
Well, thank you very
welcome-
much. So we,
Welcome, Vice Chair Robinson.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm gonna take this year to learn a lot.
so we need to change, I don't think I'm on any account and I've been here for a long time. but I
I'm
think prob-
on, 'cause I did when I became secretary.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know that I need to be on.
Okay,
So
Well,
it
I
seems
would-
like-
I would say that there's probably value in. I think there's value in having at least one officer.
Mhm.
I think there's value in having maybe another board member. And then Jeff Hunter. And I think if we can do those 3,
okay,
and then think about who, based on duration and position and all of that and expectation, all of that, I think trying to decide how to maybe pick the people so that we don't have to do this again.
What is the role of the signers? I guess I should say, is there a monthly check run? Is there
No.
some kind of
Yeah,
sign,
I've
just?
done nothing.
no,
Okay.
It's, I think it's more of emergency like situation where I can't get, Alex or Julie or whoever, it's definitely one of those like, because we always have you able to sign and we pretty much always have Jeff able to sign.
Yeah.
So it's,
Okay, so there's city staff that
Yeah, there's
are.
city staff that
on-
takes
they're
care of
the Kind of the first.
well, Alex always has.
Alex.
I've been on for a while.
Okay.
We should know, Jeff Underwood is retiring, at
Okay.
the end of the year. So we're gonna have to do this again at the beginning of next year, probably, right?
Okay.
So, because at least one person will put, if not more. So then I think what we should do is probably just solve it for this year. Pick 3 people, put them on, and then just get ready and know what the process looks like, so we can go right back at it, especially if we're gonna do a new slate of election.
In January.
In January.
all right. So who's gonna sign the checks?
Well, you want to do.
I mean, if we started from scratch, I would say the chair should be on it.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm happy to stay on it if that's like gonna ease the process, because as I recall, it wasn't 0 time invested in trying to.
It is it's a little bit of a
You have
hassle.
to go, I think, 1 or 2.
But just because you're on now doesn't mean you're not gonna have to do it again. And unfortunately, it's in some cases.
Oh, in
not all-
that case, I would say I should. Be,
Okay.
I mean, I think the chair and vice chair would be,
Mhm.
make more sense.
Yeah,
So should we just do that and
Yeah,
have,
that's fine.
so we should vote on that. And name all 3, including Jeff Underwood, and then I think we'll have what we need from from a meeting documentation perspective, and then we can, then I'll gather the paperwork, pull it all together. We have to do that physical
Yeah.
signature card. In some cases, you have to go into the bank. and
It's their wet signatures.
So does Jeff Underwood sign all your checks?
Office of the Controller has to.
So there are two ways we pay.
Okay,
There's a physical check,
okay,
and that is signed by, for control purposes, D serves it up,
right.
I sign, and then Jeff signs. So he's the control on
Is
our
it
department.
Is it dual
Dual
signature?
signature.
So you need to be on it too. You need to
So,
be on the signature.
yeah, if I'm gonna be on the signature. card.
Yeah, if it's
Yeah.
dual control.
So then,
on
and
those
then in
checks.
electronic payments, we would, we just do a kind of we do a control. internal
Right.
email.
So, okay,
So do you want to make it you, me, and Jeff?
that's fine.
Does that work?
That
Yeah.
makes sense to me. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, because if we're gonna have to do the process again January, then there's no reason why it can't be Julie. and
Yeah, yeah.
A minimal, it's a pseudo minimal commitment, I guess. You guys take care of the planning, so.
All right.
So we do a motion for Julie, Alex, and Jeff Underwood to be delegated as signature authority at the banks by the BUA.
Yes, that is the motion.
let me clarify. So my first name is actually Pierre.
Oh.
It's shocking to you.
Which we
Mr.
actually.
Mr.
probably-
Here.
Donna, Pierre,
Here.
AKA Alex Crowley, and Jeff Underwood, Jeffrey Underwood, right? So it's three. I got it.
Okay. All right,
I'll move for that, yeah.
okay,
I'll
Second.
second.
all right, all in favor, we can just do a voice vote, all in
Yeah.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carried. Get stuff done. So many, my mind is so much at ease now, it's so great, I'm feeling really good walking out of this meeting, y'all. All right, and so that kind of wraps it up, unless I missed any other unfinished business from last week.
I had a couple of just questions.
Sure.
So do we have CDFI coming in on a regular basis, like an annual basis to kind of give a report? I vaguely recall Brian coming. And I just didn't know if that was something that we had requested, because I think it would be great to get Jane on.
I
the
can
agenda.
100% ask Jane and see if she
Just to
can
have-
come in. Yeah, let me make note of that. I don't know if she would be ready to do that by next month, if she's, kind of new.
No, I don't think that there's any urgency. I just feel like since we did give such a significant amount, and I know that, are you on the board?
I'm supposed to be, but for some reason, I'm not. I don't know.
So we were supposed to have a BUEA representative.
Yeah,
So that's something. to
and Jane and
clarify.
I have had a discussion about that. We're working on that right now.
Okay, but I think that just like if we could plan on having some annual report.
Yeah, we
kind of like
need
the
to-
CCSD
yeah.
website
Right,
come in and-
No,
Because
we,
I
how
agree
we're-
with that.
yeah.
we definitely discussed that. We definitely need someone on that one for
Yeah.
sure, and that needs
Yeah.
to be rectified. And yes, we can make sure that we're getting some type of I don't know if you want an annual report, biannual, quarterly, just let me know.
I mean, I don't
We
even know,
discuss
it has to be, like, I think annually, just
Okay.
someone
We
coming
need to
in.
know what they're doing.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, so, yeah. And then the other thing, since we didn't do financials, I was curious if you had made any progress with that one outstanding loan that had not been repaid at all, the rapid response loan.
We have not gotten any movement on that. That might have to be a direct. What's up?
Yeah, okay, all right,
That's not for lack of trying, but.
Not for lack of trying, not for lack of trying.
yeah, that's just for no payment at all.
Right.
Yeah.
But never even got out of the gate.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
All right, anyone else? All right, we are going to end right on time. All right, thank you all so much for your help and welcome, Chris, and thank you, Heather, for stepping up. We really appreciate it. And see you all next month.
All right.
We're gonna, if not sooner. Thanks.